Application Security's rough week. Next.js SV16. 2.5 dropped quietly, but the security fixes it carried were anything but quiet. A researcher reverse-engineered the commit diff between v16.24 and v16.25 using Project Discovery's Neo tool and published proof-of-concept exploits for all 12 patched advisories. The haul includes 6 high-severity issues: a React server action stream denial of service CVE202623870, an app router prefetch middleware bypass CVE202644575, a Next resume connection exhaustion attack CVE202644579, a dynamic root and middleware mismatch CVE202644574, a WebSocket upgrade SSRF affecting self-hosted deployments CVE202644578, and a Pages router I18 and data root bypass CVE202644573. The moderate severity items hit CSP nonce parsing, Next/script XSS via before interactive, an image optimizer decompression bomb, and RSC/HTML cache confusion. 2 low-severity issues rounded out with weak RC cache busting hashes and Next.js data redirect cache poisoning. Each poke directory ships a runnable exploit script, plus a vulnerable minimal app for reproduction. If you run Next.js in production and haven't upgraded, the attacker surface just got a detailed instruction manual. The lesson that client-side code cannot be trusted got a painful refresher from India's Central Board of Secondary Education. A student, fresh off his own Class 12 exams, poked at the on-screen marking portal that thousands of examiners use to grade answer sheets digitally and found a catastrophe. A hard-coded master password sat in plain text inside the minified Angular bundle, bypassing OTP entirely. The OTP itself was theater. The server returned the code in the auth response, and the browser graded its own test. No root guards existed. Seeding a few values into browser storage dropped you onto the dashboard without authentication. The password change API never verified the current password, and a systemic IDOR across the entire API meant changing one ID in local storage let you act as any user. Combined, an attacker could take over any examiner account and edit marks for a national exam affecting millions of students. The researcher reported everything to CertIn, got a boilerplate acknowledgement, and watched the flaws sit unpatched for months. Meanwhile, scammers have been abusing Microsoft's own account dash alert at accountprotection.microsoft.com address, the one used for legitimate 2-factor authentication codes, to send phishing emails. Anti-spam nonprofit Spamhaus confirmed the activity has persisted for months, noting that automated notification systems should not allow this level of customization. Microsoft acknowledged the issue after TechCrunch's inquiry and says it is actively investigating, but the loophole remains open. Subscription Frauds Maturing Toolkit, the GPT Agreement Payment Repository, an end-to-end replay tool for obtaining ChatGPT Plus and Team subscriptions through automated Stripe, PayPal, GoPay, and Croix billing agreement flows, has matured considerably since it first surfaced. The project now ships a Docker-based WebUI with a 14-step configuration wizard, end-worker concurrency with advisory lock mutual exclusion for OTP stages, and a 12-path self-healing daemon designed for weeks of unattended operation. The hCaptcha visual solver alone runs roughly 4,000 lines covering 12 known challenge types, falling back through a VLM CLEP OpenCV decision ladder. A PayPal guest checkout path using OpenAI promo campaign long links adds a 4th payment vector alongside the original billing agreement, GoPay wallet linking, and Cryas car code flows. The concurrency model is particularly well-engineered. Multiple workers sharing a phone pool use advisory locks to serialize only the OTP stage while running pre- and post-OTP steps fully in parallel, with database atomic claims preventing double allocation of promo links or inventory emails. What makes this more than a script kiddie toolkit is the anti-fraud research documentation. The author reports that batch-created accounts show approximately 2% next-day survival. OpenAI's defenses operate on at least 2 layers: a probe layer that detects fraud signals, IP string-level fingerprinting, batch correlation across account creation timestamps, Stripe runtime fingerprint drift, and a separate ban layer that acts on delayed schedules, catching clusters that real-time blocking misses. The runtime version and JS checksum fields in Stripe's client-side telemetry drift every few weeks and require manual realignment. A moving target that makes fully automated fraud unsustainable at scale. The repo is explicitly positioned for CTF, bug bounty, and authorized security research. The author's own data demonstrates why the economics of subscription fraud don't pencil out for actual criminals. That 2% survival rate is the anti-fraud system working as designed. LLMs Enter the SOC. A new research paper from the Austrian Institute of Technology introduces CAM-LDS, the Cyber Attack Manifestation Log dataset, a purpose-built benchmark for testing whether LLMs can interpret security logs. The dataset covers 7 fully scripted attack scenarios executing 81 distinct MITRE ATT&CK techniques across 13 tactics, collected from 18 log sources in a reproducible Linux environment. Unlike red team exercise datasets where labeling is noisy and human error is common, CAM-LDS uses attackmate playbooks for deterministic, repeatable execution with keystroke-level realism. The scenarios span video server exploitation, Linux malware deployment, lateral movement, network attacks, credential sniffing, client-side social engineering, and Docker container escape. Covering the full kill chain from reconnaissance through exfiltration and impact, the paper's analysis of how attacks manifest in logs reveals sobering numbers. Of 243 attack steps, 47.3% leave explicit command traces in audit logs and 17.3% show indicators in other log sources. But 32.1% produce events that don't directly reference the executed command, and 18.5% leave no observable traces at all after filtering. Signature-based IDS, Wazoo, and Suricata, with default rules, detected only 43 of 198 log-producing attack steps at low-high severity. The illustrative LLM evaluation using ChatGPT 5.2 in a zero-shot setting is where it gets interesting. Correct MITRE A, T, T, and C, K techniques appeared in the top prediction for roughly 1/3 of attack steps, and within the top 10 predictions for another third. Classification accuracy correlated strongly with command observability, high event frequencies, and the presence of IDS alerts, the bottom third. Subtle attack steps with indirect manifestations remained largely opaque to the model. The dataset, infrastructure, attack scripts, and prompts are all open source. On the offensive tooling side, goLoL is a new Go-based Windows scanner that pulls the latest LOLBAS, living off the land binaries and scripts, catalog, resolves which binaries actually exist on the local file system, and filters techniques by the current privilege tier. Standard user, administrator, or SY-STEM. It maps each technique to MITRE A, T, T, and C, K IDs with example commands, providing a privilege-aware attack surface inventory in a single scan. And for the reverse engineering crowd, Oxidizer has merged into the angr decompiler framework as the first decompiler that actually understands Rust. Not C with Rust syntax, but real Rust with drop-in-place, option, bounds checks, and result recovery through a pipeline of Flirt-based compiler fingerprinting, FCFG simplification, retip type inference, and high-level Rust pseudocode output. The harness is the product. A sweeping 30-page survey from UIUC, Meta, and Stanford frames the shift that practitioners are living through. Code is no longer just what agents produce. It is the operational substrate through which they reason, act, and verify. The paper introduces code as agent harness, organizing the landscape into 3 layers. The harness interface, code for reasoning, action, and environment modeling. Harness mechanisms, planning, memory, tool use, feedback-driven control, and scaling the harness across multi-agent systems with shared code artifacts. The taxonomy covers everything from Claude Code and Codex to embodied robots and scientific discovery pipelines, arguing that the bottleneck of autonomy is increasingly the reliability of the system connecting model outputs to long-horizon actions, not the reasoning ability of the base model itself. The practical evidence keeps stacking up. OpenAI's Codex just shipped an experimental goals feature that amounts to a built-in Ralph loop with budget-aware graceful shutdown. Give it /goal, define completion criteria, and it runs autonomously for hours, creating assets, writing code, running playwright verification scripts, with 4 exit paths depending on budget, completion state, crashes, or manual pause. One user reported a 50-hour continuous run. The key differentiator over hand-rolled loops is integrated billing management. When approaching token limits, Codex injects a budget limit markdown file and wraps up gracefully with a status report rather than simply dying. A practitioner running a fully local agent stack on DGX Spark plus Mac Mini plus A5000 hardware offers the field report that crystallizes why harness engineering matters more than model selection. The single biggest win: stop giving local models 39 tools. A fast router model, 5.4:14b about 50 ms, classifies intent and routes to specialists that see only 3 to 6 relevant tools each. Most pipelines use deterministic code-controlled workflows, not React loops, where the model only extracts parameters and synthesizes text. A 30B model choosing between 6 tools is reliable. The same model choosing between 39 wanders, picks wrong tools, and burns iterations. P memory moved from flat JSON, which accumulated 14 near-duplicate facts, to FalcRDB with a graph schema featuring SUPERSDIS chains for fact evolution. DeepSeek Reasonix takes a different but complementary approach. An append-only, cache-first coding agent loop engineered specifically around DeepSeek's byte-stable prefix cache. By never reordering or compacting message history, long sessions hold 90% plus cache hit rates and input token cost collapses to roughly 1/5 of standard pricing. It supports Model Context Protocol, MCP, servers via one-line mount and sandboxes all tools to the launch directory. Archon extends the integration surface by adding a Jira adapter. Comment in a ticket, get real-time AI agent responses, joining existing adapters for GitHub, Slack, Discord, and Telegram. A merged PR in llama.c, P addresses a pain point anyone doing local agentic coding has hit: context reprocessing. Tools like OpenCode rewrite conversation history to optimize context, forcing llama.c, P to reprocess the entire prompt, potentially 70K tokens. The checkpoint fix ensures that only the changed portion gets reprocessed, making local agentic coding measurably more responsive. The author reports 2 weeks of daily use with significant improvements. And on the human side of the harness equation, a detailed argument for evolving from prompt engineering to an AI question method makes the case that frontier models, Opus 4.7 GPT-5 are now senior partners rather than junior ones. They need questions that convey intent with directional focus while leaving room for exploration, not step-by-step task specifications. Beyond vectors, agent memory gets a graph. A deep dive into Neo4j's agent memory SDK highlights a fundamental limitation of vector indices for long-lived agents. They have no concept of identity. If Carpathy appears in 10 documents, a vector index cannot unify those references, link them to entities, or know whether today's mention refers to the same person it embedded yesterday. The proposed fix is a 3-tier graph memory system anchored to a pol plus O ontology: person, object, location, event, organization. Short-term messages use next chains, long-term entities get deduplicated, and reasoning traces store past thought patterns for one-shot retrieval. Essentially reinforcement learning at the database level. Entity extraction uses a confidence ladder. SPSI and GLiner handle high-confidence cases. LLMs fire only on ambiguity, and an identity gate auto-merges at scores above 0.95 while creating pending, same AS edges for the 0, 8, 5, 0, 9, 5 band. The key design principle: false merges are silent and unrecoverable, false splits are recoverable. Retrieval runs as a single cipher query fusing vector similarity with multi-hop traversals. On the model adaptation front, an N-T-K mirror dual approach claims to make fine-tuning as we know it obsolete. The core idea: one SGD step has an exact dual. A small signed controller on the forward pass that reproduces the supervised update without touching any weight. On QWEN2.5-7 B plus GSM8K, a 50K scalar controller matches LoRa R8 accuracy in 22 seconds of fitting, infers 100% faster, and forgets 3.4x less, 4.7 pp versus 16.3 pp drop on held-out code generation. Each controller is a 200 KB file that can be retrieved at inference and installed via forward hooks with 0 token overhead. No KV cache footprint, no quadratic attention cost. 2 controllers trained on different tasks compose with just plus 0.005 NLL drift versus 17% degradation under equivalent LoRa composition. The package is pip installable and works on any Hugging Face causal LM, with a preprint promised for next week. The broader trajectory these point toward is ambient intelligence. AI systems that sense presence through walls, monitor environments passively, learn patterns continuously, and respond without cameras, cloud dependence, or constant user interaction. The framing positions this as AI escaping the screen to interact with the invisible world that was always there, waiting to become programmable. Ternary training, DNA models, and small model pragmatism. BITCPMCANN presents the first end-to-end 1.58-bit ternary training system on Huawei's Ascend NPU platform, scaling up to 8B parameters. 4 models, 0.5B through 8B, were trained using quantization-aware training aligned with Mini-PM4 counterparts in architecture and pre-training data. The results are striking. The 1B, 3B, and 8B variants retain 95.7%, 97.2% of full precision performance across 11 benchmarks spanning common sense reasoning, domain knowledge, and mathematics. The 0.5B variant retains 90.1%, with the gap concentrated in mathematics, indicating that capacity, not the ternary quantizer, is the bottleneck at sub-billion scales. Training overhead is a mere 4.5%, 148 versus 155 T, F, L, O, P/S per NPU, with up to 8x weight memory reduction at inference. The political subtext is hard to miss. This proves ternary training is viable as a default configuration entirely outside the CUDA ecosystem. Hugging Face's Carbon release brings modern LLM training techniques to genomics, Carbon 3. B matches the current state-of-the-art, Evo 2.7b, while running 275x faster, using deterministic 6-mer tokenization instead of BPE, which doesn't behave well on DNA, a factorized loss function that replaced cross-entropy mid-training to handle the fact that scoring 5/6 nucleotides right the same as 0/6 is brittle for genomic sequences, and a curated staged functional DNA plus mRNA data mixture. The AI content detection arms race continues with Slop Hammer, a Chrome extension running a Qwen 3.50.8b model fine-tuned on Pangram's Editlands dataset. The model runs entirely locally in under 1 second on an M1 MacBook, outputting probability distributions across 4 detection buckets rather than a single binary score. The limitations are real. GPT-5 output already confuses it, and community testing reports abundant false positives on complex human writing. But the approach of distilling detection into a 4.0.0 local model running in a browser extension is notable for its accessibility. On the creative tooling front, a pipeline that uses LLMs as structured code compilers to generate multi-part 3D objects with functional articulated parts through Blender's scene graph, exporting clean GLB files with working pivot axes instead of the monolithic mesh blobs that diffusion-based systems produce, shows what happens when you treat generation as code compilation rather than pixel prediction. Local models still hallucinate Blender's internal matrix math, but the architecture is model agnostic. And AudioMass ships a free open-source multi-track audio editor that runs entirely in the browser. Drag, drop, cut, paste, pitch shift, all client-side with no install and no upload.